Uganda and Seychelles, they share the very rare distinction of being the only countries on the continent who do not lose money on every unit of electricity they sell. Now, the rest of us, South Africa included, Kenya as well, we lose, according to the World Bank, about 6 US cents for every kilowatt hour of power sold on the grid. Now, this high cost is often cited as a barrier to high investments in energy-intensive businesses like manufacturing. But fundamentally, if we're already selling power at a loss, the question has to be asked, what should electricity really cost in Kenya? That's a question I explored in this final part of an interview with its Chief Executive of Kenya Power, Tarus.
The last time we had a tariff review was in 2013.
Yeah.
And our tariff review normally runs for a 3-year period, so we were due for another review in 2016, in which case we made applications. But of course, we didn't receive any positive feedback from the regulator. We made another appeal in 2017, which is now being reviewed by ERC. What we are essentially saying as KPLC is we want a cost-reflective tariff. We are not saying we want a tariff that will profit Kenya Power, or we want a tariff that will put Kenya Power on a loss position. We want a tariff that will reflect the cost of maintaining and running the network.
But as it sounds then, you're actually agreeing with what the World Bank pointed out earlier this month, where they said that pretty much across most African markets, electricity is sold below cost. The only two markets, by their estimation, in this market, in Kenya, we're actually incurring a net loss of about 6 US cents for every kilowatt hour that's actually put into the grid. Do you agree with that position?
No. In situations where you find cost of power below cost of cost of selling power at below the cost of generation, that is where governments have stepped in to subsidize. In fact, when you look at the cost of generation in Ethiopia, and this is where a lot of companies have been saying we are going to Ethiopia because the cost of power is low, Tanzania, and so on and so forth. Governments have come in to subsidize the cost of that power. But in this country, it is a liberal market. The forces of demand and supply have been left to determine.
But hold on. Here's the thing I'm trying to reconcile. On one hand, I have the World Bank saying, look, Kenya loses about 6 US cents for every kilowatt hour it sells. On the other hand, there's you making an application and saying, look, give me a 3 US cent kilowatt hour, 3 US cent per kilowatt hour increase in tariffs. I mean, that by itself seems to suggest that we're not selling power at cost.
Of course, we are not selling at cost because we are looking at these elements. We are looking at the cost of generation. We are looking at the cost of distribution, which is basically what KPLC is given to maintain the network and then to ensure that we have quality and sufficient supply to the customers, and that has to be reflected in the tariff.
All right, so give me a number. What would make tariffs cost reflective if it's not this 3 US cent per kilowatt hour increment?
Now, if you look at the current average cost of generation, it is anything in the range of about 8.5 to 9 US cents average cost.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the cost of transmitting that across to the customer, perhaps another about 40 US cents. So you are looking at anything in the range of about 12, 13. Now, of course, you add in the other elements we talked about.
Yeah.
Taxes, warmer charges, rural electrification levy, to now get the actual cost of power that gets to the end consumer.
So what would you like? What sort of price do you want?
I would be looking at all those costs inclusive. I would be looking at anything in the range of about 18.5, 18.9. Because at the moment, when you load all those costs, it will give you an average of about 17.50.
So then 18.5 to 18.9 US cents per kilowatt hour. Will he get it? We'll find out at the end of July.